Hi everyone, I'm ready to get started soon. And there we go, we're on the hour. So thank you so much for everyone who's joined and might still be joining. I did something really cool today that I thought that I'd share with you first. And I started the webinar earlier, so I started the live event earlier. And that's so that I can have a bit of a custom slide up that just says, hey, we'll be starting soon, give you some news. But I saw this on a call last night. Ali used this in her PowerPoint, and that was adding a GIF. And I thought that's quite nice. It just shows the audience that you are going to start soon. You know, it's not that the screen's hanging or anything. And it's a great way to just give some details and to let people that you will be starting soon, and maybe even share new features and tips, you know, that people can go and check out while they're waiting, go and grab a cup of coffee. So that was quite a nice test to try out today. So as I said, thanks for joining. I'm Tracy, and I had a cool webinar as well 2 weeks ago on PowerPoint, and I'm going to try and do this more regularly. Today's webinar, and I'll just go to the original screen that I've been sharing all this time on social media. So today is all about Microsoft Teams, and it's more about the setting up of and the configuring of it. And of course, I'm talking about from the front end side more. So from the people creating Teams and the people using Teams. And I think this is very, very important. I'd love to do more webinars just on Microsoft Teams, but I did think that this was important to get out of the way first. So if I do future webinars with Teams, I can always refer people back to this recording if they didn't join it. So what did I say? Lack of planning. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And that's just one of those very, very important things that we need to keep our eye on. So let's just see to get started. So let's just see, I'm going to, and as I mentioned in the previous webinar, I'm doing this whole like crazy production thing with Teams live events. So it's me, I'm checking Q&A there on the other side. So if I keep on looking away from the camera, you got to understand that's my other personality kicking in, which is the producer or the organizer, just checking that everything's going okay. So I will just be keeping my eye on these type of things and make sure that I answer questions. I have set time aside for Q&As during the live event. And then also it's kind of a, I suppose, a disclaimer up front. And before I introduce myself, is that I do talk very fast, and I'm so sorry for those that it might be difficult for. But what you can do is you can watch the YouTube recording afterwards and slow it down. I think that could work. So there's no slowing me down. I've tried. It's impossible to slow me down. I get too excited about things. So I will try. If I really go too fast, you're welcome to use the Q&A and just post a note there or as a question and just say, please, Trace, you're really going too fast. Because remember, in my head, this all feels absolutely normal. So let's get started. For those of you who doesn't know me, I'm all the way from South Africa. It's 7 p.m. at night here at the moment. We are busy going into winter, so we still have beautiful sunny days. It's in the mid-20s Celsius at the moment, and I'm a Microsoft MVP as well. I'm an absolute lover of Microsoft products, and my business motto is to facilitate the evolution of human capabilities. And that's definitely why I do these things. I do a lot of blogs, I do videos. It's recent now that I've started doing my own webinars. I've always done webinars for other companies. And I just said, there you go, Microsoft has got Teams live events. This is absolutely perfect because we can fit 10,000 people in a room and pretty soon 20,000 people. So how's that for crowdsourcing 101? And especially in times where we're working from home and things are so much different, which means we can just really reach out to more people. So please keep your eye out for the webinars that I am posting out there. I do consider this as free training. You can join anonymously. I'm not going to send you marketing spam. I'm not going to make you sign up for things. And you can definitely consider this as little training sessions. So why don't you share these things in your company, book everyone for a little event, get together, have a glass of wine, get everyone to get on the training session. So I'd really love to help more people to achieve more. And I think that's why I align so well with Microsoft as well, is that we have the same mission and vision statement, if I can think of it that way, the values. And that's that we want to enable everyone and every person on the planet to achieve more from anywhere at any time with any device. And as we all know, right at this moment, today is the 14th of May 2020, in case you'll be watching this in a different time zone at some point. And right now, most of us are working from home. So how much better is it to have the tools to help us with these things? So you can find me on social media. Go look for me on Twitter at TracyVDS. You'll see the details is there at the bottom. And I'm on YouTube, I'm on LinkedIn. I've got all my slides. I'm normally on SlideShare as well. I'll actually, and that's just a reminder, I'll definitely load the webinars slide decks on SlideShare as well. I'm going to grab my phone and go to OneNote because I'm like that. OneNote's my most favorite thing in the world. And I'm going to make a note to load the slides on SlideShare for you. So I'll definitely make a note to do that as well. And then I've got a blog, tracyvanderschuyf.com, my website. I can't say I'm too worried about it. But please reach out, connect to people on social media, and then, well, let's get started. This is going to be lots of fun. Now, as mentioned, today's session is Microsoft Teams. It's not going to be so much onto how you use Teams, okay? It's more about the structure and the planning you have to do up front. What I also want to say is that this is my personal opinion, okay? You've got to get this straight. So even though I'm a Microsoft MVP, we don't always agree. I don't always agree with Microsoft. I don't always agree with the MVPs. I don't always agree with the world or the community. And, you know, that's just the disruptive type of person I am. So a lot of these things are my thoughts and my processes that I go into based on experience and the suffering and pain that I've had with companies to help them get things right. So there's always more than one way to do things. Please remember that as well. Take what you're going to see from my sessions and go work through it and see how you can adapt it, how you can use it in your companies, because you might use bits of it, not everything. So definitely personal opinions. I feel very strong about specific things. It's going to show. But yeah, let's get started. So what we'll be covering today, firstly, is information architecture. And I should say that as information architecture before I have some of the older techies scream at me, because it's not the traditional information architecture that we kind of had years ago. This is a much looser term as to how the apps and services work together, where your content sits, etc. So I'm not going to go into that serious information architecture like the enterprise level, but I am going to cover a bit on where things go and what I think is best suited for what. I want to talk about Teams over adoption, and I bet you didn't think you were going to hear that in this session. So I've written some blogs about it. I'm passionate about it because, yes, we are having some Teams over adoption. There is such a thing, and it's not a good thing. Okay. Then I want to just look at the structure, and that goes down to the team level and give you some advice on how to structure your teams and some ideas around that. And also, very importantly, things you shouldn't do. I always say that it's not always about teaching people the right way to do things. More of my teachings comes from what you shouldn't do, because believe me, I've done it wrong. And I don't want you to make the same mistakes as I do. And I think that's one of the biggest lies in the world, is that you can't learn from someone else's mistakes, because of course you can. I mean, if you're willing to listen and you kind of take some of that home and you work through it, then you can learn from other people's mistakes. Governance, which leaves a bad taste in my mouth, always has. It's like change management, adoption, governance, all these very strict things. But I do have a couple of things I have to share with you around governance that I want you to take note of. And then, as always, very, very important for me, and I think I'm going to make that a standard in my webinars, and that's that I want to keep on making sure that you know how to stay up to date. We kind of assume that people know something, and that's the biggest evil of all, is to assume. Now, I definitely think I'm going to always build that into my slide deck, is where do you get support? Who's the community? Where do you find what? Where do you find training material? And how do you keep on learning? If that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, it's to help people become self and curious lifelong learners. So let's see how we can get started with that. Now, the first section that I am going to be looking at is the information architecture. And as I said, you got to water that down a little bit, okay? I'm not one of those fancy pants people. And for those of you who knows me, I'm a crazy pants people, okay? So not a fancy pants people. I don't have a single black pinstripe pants, so that's not going to happen. So information architecture, when it comes to Microsoft 365 or Office 365, which you're still used to calling it, is something that's very important for me. And I'm definitely a picture person, and infographics is something that works for me. So if I help companies move on to cloud technologies and help them change their cultures, the way that they do things, the way that people think, I always suggest to them that, and not just suggest, I insist on it, you have to come up with a new digital strategy. You have to kind of write this idea of what it is and how you're going to do it going forward. A lot of companies don't do that. A lot of companies are scared to document these things up front until they don't have all the facts. So here's the most important thing you can learn in this webinar, and after that you can switch off and go drink wine or coffee or something if you want to, is that you're never going to know everything again. And the soonest you get used to that, the better. The sooner you realize that there's a small disadvantage of having to learn every single day to kind of stay up to date. You can't wait a couple of months and think that you know it all. So don't wait until you think you know everything before you start documenting your digital strategy, because that's not going to work, okay? Document the thoughts that you already have and make sure that you communicate it in the company that these things will be reviewed and you will keep on updating it as you go on. People need to understand that technology has changed to agile technology. A lot of companies don't realize that. It's not waterfall anymore. It doesn't work like that anymore. So this example picture that I have here, it's just an example, peeps. But what I tell companies to do is that they need to kind of document the old way of working. You have to map it, and to do it visually really helps users. So your employees kind of like relates to things better if they can see that this is the way that we're used to working and this is what we suggest you do going forward. So if I look at these examples, most of the content in your company, and you can do this for content as well as for communication, because that can be two different ways of working. So if I look at this, this infographic, then if I have to think that the way that I worked with my personal documents before maybe was just saved on my PC and maybe on my Word, just on my desktop, okay, never mind my documents. So maybe it wasn't on your desktop, maybe it wasn't on my documents. It's possible that it was in a file share, so that P drive or whatever it is that they call it, the Z drive or something. So that file share, your personal content could have been on there. And the same as with work drafts. There might have been a folder there that's shared with your whole department. And that typically was on file shares or even older SharePoint on-premises versions, possibly. If we then look at sharing files externally, most of that was done via email. Okay, that was kind of the method that we did things, and don't make a mistake, we even shared files internally on emails. Then also the sharing of content on an ad hoc basis. So you don't really work with a person, but maybe once in a couple of months you need to share a document with them. You could have done that through file shares or through email. And then, of course, departmental shares, so human resources or sales or procurement, possibly could have been on an old SharePoint version, but of course it could have been on a file share as well. And then sharing content with larger internal audiences tends to be an intranet environment. Some companies had other platforms. Again, some companies use SharePoint, so that might have been on premises, so older versions, not online versions. So if I look at the new way of working and where this can map to, and like I said, this is just a general thing. We're obviously talking, we want to use OneDrive for business, okay, very important. Personal preference, I don't use personal OneDrive in work environments. So even on work PCs, I prefer users only having the OneDrive for business. Remember that nothing is shared until you share it. So don't be scared to put your documents in there. It's the same as when you're still using the company's PC and you've got your personal budget on there. If you win the lottery and you run away, then you got to remove your files before you go. That's how it works. So we got OneDrive for business. Email is still going to be there. Outlook's not going to go anywhere, okay? But we're hoping that we're going to share less stuff through Outlook, okay? Then, of course, Teams is a big player now. Yammer, and oh my word, I hope you saw that webinar. 2 days ago, there was a webinar about the new sexy Yammer, okay? Like, whoo. Then Stream, Sway, even Forms, lots of different ways of sharing content. So you need to draw this picture. You need to kind of map things out and put a note on there and say that this will be reviewed every month. As Microsoft or as the industry launches new features and new technology comes out, you have to keep on reviewing this, because something might come out tomorrow that completely changes the landscape of what you planned, okay? So that's very, very important for me to make sure that you do document those things up front. Here's another example of those little crazy infographics I draw. And just to explain to users, again, personal opinion. So email could be ad hoc communications and external communications. I'm saying communications, okay? I'm not talking about attaching documents. So you might, in future, attach a link. My OneDrive is for my private files, maybe my work drafts, and possibly, if your company allows it, files that are shared externally. Then my Teams is for departmental environments, so the specific department that I belong to, human resources, etc. Projects, initiatives, and when I say initiatives, maybe it's a strange example, but let's think the Exco team, because the Exco might not be a department, but it's something that runs across. Or what could be another great example? You know, can't think of another good example, but the change management or the adoption team, okay? And then of course in Teams you get org-wide teams as well, which we'll discuss. And then SharePoint, of course, sits behind Microsoft Teams, but you can also have standalone SharePoint sites as communication sites, as intranets, communication portals, beautiful tool for that. Then, of course, here on the sideline, I've also added Stream, Forms, Sway, Yammer as my other content methods as well, and it's also storage locations. Please just a note, I didn't do it in this webinar. I want you to take note that there's different storage locations for specific things. Your OneDrive, your Exchange, your Teams, your SharePoint sits in the same tenant. Yammer will as well if you've moved across to the newer platform, but Sway, Forms, Stream doesn't sit in the same tenant necessarily, or even in the same country. So make sure that you know where that data center sits if you have compliance issues. So please just check that without just assuming that everything sits in your data center. So if you do have compliance issues with content outside of country, make sure where the data center is that that content sits. Cool. Now we're going to start chatting about that first problem child of mine, and this is also one of those things that I share with people that they normally don't like me saying, which is why I've got a happy and a sad face there. I don't believe that everyone should create teams, okay? That's out of it. So I've had enough hippies fight with me about organic growth and things like that. Now, I've supported many SharePoint environments and file share environments in my life to know that things goes horribly wrong if people aren't trained well. And for years, we didn't invest in our greatest assets, which is our employees, by training them well. So if people aren't trained well, you can't give them this power, which they could mess up without knowing the right things, okay? When people are trained well and they trained on the right information so they can make better informed decisions, then absolutely they should create teams. So I'm not saying they shouldn't create teams. I'm saying they shouldn't create teams if they were not trained on knowing what happens in the background. I'm not just talking about uploading a document to Teams. I want them to understand what happens in the background and things like that. So that's out of the way. I've had a lot of trouble on that in the past, and I don't care. You can bring it on. I still stick to my guns. Not everyone should be creating teams. So, and just on a technical point, in case you didn't know that, it's not just a switch that you can switch off on the tenant. Please, 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 Microsoft, can we make it easier? You need to switch off the creation of Office 365 groups / teams through PowerShell. Okay, so it's not something you can easily remove, but you can then go and say that you assign one person per department or location, have them fully trained up, and put them in a specific Azure security group that allows them to create teams. Okay, and you can then have a little internal process in the different departments that they then provision teams. It's not an approval process, but it's just the information gathering process. Okay, so the reason why I don't want everyone to create teams is that this is what happens in the background when you push that button, okay? This is quite an old slide already. I think it's about, I don't know, 2 years old. I don't know, so I hope nothing happened like last night because I didn't check today. But when you create a new Microsoft team, it creates a Office 365 group in the background. It creates an Office 365 group. Sorry, I got sidetracked there for a moment because I'm typical squirrel brain and I saw a question, but I'll go back to the question in a moment. So Office 365 group in the background, which is like a security group, or think a distribution list, okay? Creates a SharePoint site collection. If you don't know how big a site collection is, just think as big as an intranet, okay? It can be massive. Creates a shared mailbox and calendar, shared OneNote, shared planner, workspace and Power BI group in Microsoft Stream, okay? And it does it in like a second. So if you didn't allow all your users in the past to create all of those resources with good reason, then you can't just have them create teams. They need to understand what that impacts and what happens in the background. I've gone into companies where people create teams as if they're folders because they don't understand that it's not just a grouping. There's so many resources in the background. So someone will say, hey, we've got a management meeting tomorrow. Oh, great, let's create a team called management meeting tomorrow. And believe me, it's happening all over the world. So if people don't understand this bigger picture, they should not be creating teams. And there's a couple of other things as well. So whatever I'm going to cover in this webinar with you will hopefully put you in a place where you can make better informed decisions. Cool. Teams over adoption. I'm going to quickly just look at this question. I'm not in Q&A yet, but I'm going to just quickly note that. So for the person, and let me just publish this. For the person who posted about the schedule to know whether there is a schedule, I actually haven't thought about that, but I think I might do that. I think I'll put out a 2-month schedule for the webinars that I'll run. And last time I did a Microsoft form where I asked people what topics they would like me to talk on, but you're welcome to just use the Q&A. So if there's specific topics that you'd like me to cover, I can't say I can do them all, but this is specifically around OneDrive. So I'm actually quite keen to do a nice webinar about OneDrive because I don't think there's enough focus on it. Companies are just launching OneDrive like it's just like easy and everyone can just use it, and then I see the chaos, okay? OneDrive is an unbelievable tool. You can't, it's the same as with Teams. When people tell me like, why? No, people don't need training. Why don't we just send them a URL? I'm like, sweetie, it's not like riding a bicycle, okay? We had bicycles years ago. We have Ferraris now, so people need training. I don't care if they can ride a bicycle, they need training. Cars are different, okay? Teams, OneDrive, those are Ferraris. It's not bicycles, okay? I'll definitely do work on that. So thanks for that feedback. I will look at doing a schedule and that I can put out. So if you follow me on social media, I'll put that out. And I think I'll do a standard form as well that I'll add on my profile on my social media that people can fill in for webinars that they would like me to cover or questions that they'd like me to cover. Okay, so Teams over adoption. I'm going to get sidetracked. I don't have a lot of time left. Teams over adoption does exist. I'm going to start running through these slides. Remember that this does get recorded. I am going to share the presentation on SlideShare afterwards as well. It might take me a day or two because funny enough, in lockdown, I've become super lazy. I don't know how that happened. I got a bit of a lockdown fuzzy gray brain on me. I don't know where my productivity has gone. So I'm going to try and do it tomorrow. I'll be a good person. So firstly, over adoption does exist in Teams, people. And over adoption means when you look at Microsoft Teams and it looks like this. If you belong to too many teams and they have too many channels, you have a problem. So whenever I see Teams look like this, and believe me, I've seen the worst of it, then I know that someone doesn't know what they're doing. And it's not necessarily their fault. That's the thing you have to understand about me. I have zero tact, okay? So let's get that out of the way. I'm disruptive and I'm aggressive, which is also known as passion, but apparently I'm aggressive, okay? If you have like 15 or 20 or 30 teams that you belong to, that's chaos. If they have like 10, 15, 20 channels, that's chaos. I'm sorry to say it. It should not be the rule. It should be an exception. So there's a specific thing that I use or a specific methodology, which I'm going to share with you now, which kind of helps me to just keep the lid on that craziness. So firstly, I'm not talking about temporary teams. I'm not talking about small little projects that you run that kind of gets archived on a regular basis and changes. I'm talking about the teams that you belong to permanently, departments, I don't know, those type of teams. You shouldn't have hundreds of those people. Someone's creating teams unnecessarily, and now everyone's stuck with it because most probably someone didn't get training, the right training, and someone wasn't invested in to make the right decisions. Okay, so I'm not blaming them. I am saying we need to stop doing that. So that's absolutely over-adoption. Let me give you another example of over-adoption. Folders in inboxes in Outlook. That's over-adoption 101. I mean, people that has 10, 15, 20, 25, it's chaos. Folders in nested folders and file shares, that's over-adoption. Someone never learned how to do decent naming convention and got out of hand. Please don't let that happen with Teams, and don't let that happen with your OneDrive. Please, please, please don't do that. So here's my little crazy rule that I'm going to share with you, because I've got lots of those. It's called the magic rule of 7 plus or minus 2. So make a note of that. Go Google it, because yes, I said Google. So the magic rule of 7 plus or minus 2. It's the way the brain remembers information, and that's also how telephone numbers were designed, by the way, and things like that. And that says that the brain remembers pockets of information like this. When it gets more than that, it gets fuzzy, okay? So I kind of stick to the magic rule of 7. It's just that easy. It's also my favorite number, which means that when I kind of look at structuring my teams and how many channels I want to have, I keep on sticking to that rule. I try and stay as close as I can to that rule. Of course, everything's not perfect, and some of them is going to be 9 or 10 or 11 channels, and some will be 4. But it's just a good guideline for me, because it tells me what the magic number is that my brain still focuses on, because it's a fact, it works like that. Anything more than that, then people start losing track on what goes where and what the purpose is of it. So there's a blog as well that you can go check out that I wrote about who gets a team, where I've got a list of questions that I go through about when it should be a team or not. Okay, so if someone comes to me and says, Trace, I share documents with people every month end, and I'm like, okay, do you have meetings with them? Nah. Do they edit the documents? No, it's just a set of PDFs I put in there. I'm like, okay. Do you have lots of conversations and things? She says, nah. I'm like, okay, you don't need a team for that. That could rather be a group chat, by the way, or a folder that you share out of OneDrive. Be careful of over-creating teams when it's really not necessary. It's an unbelievable tool. Don't kill the tool because you're using it wrong. Okay, so magic rule of 7, number of teams, blah, blah, blah. Next thing I want to talk about is naming conventions. So this is typically human. There you go. It's going to say marketing, reports, sales, actual sales, 2019, Cape Town, drafts, sales, blah, 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 document name. We had a character limit on our PCs, and believe me, SharePoint Online's got a 400 limit when it comes to characters. Doesn't quite work the same, so don't get technical with me about how it counts characters, because there is a difference. But it does make a difference when it comes to how your search works. You cannot use old ways of navigating to content in new technology. If you're going to double click through folders and Teams, you're going to hate Teams. So the next person that comes to me and says that Teams sucks and that search sucks, I'm like, no, sweetie, someone never taught you how to search, or someone never showed you how to do decent naming conventions, and it's not your fault, okay? That's why I'm so passionate about helping people and correcting that mistake, because we're not investing in people and giving them the right information. Do not build folders inside folders like that, people. It's going to give a horrible experience. Start using search better and start using naming conventions better. So on the naming conventions, just a note that I do want to make. Remember that structure that you build in your team, every channel is a folder in the document library in SharePoint. Okay, so as I said, I can only on our overview cover all of these things that I think is important. So every channel you create is a folder in the SharePoint library. Some of the rules I have, don't want to go into detail too much now. I don't rename channels, and be very careful when you delete channels, because sometimes the folders on SharePoint and the channels that you see in Teams is not in sync anymore. So if you do delete the channel, make sure that you go to SharePoint and delete the folder. Rather don't rename channels. I would rather create a new channel, ask everyone, listen, the conversations on the old channel, can we whack that? Move the files across and delete the old channel and delete the folder, okay? Those folders on SharePoint, you can also sync that down to your PC, obviously. So you can have that same list of folders on your PC, which is brilliant, okay? In South Africa, our bandwidth is terrible. So it really helps to have local copies of the documents. And the nice thing about this is that it really helps with search. So the better your document names and naming conventions are, the better search works. If I look at this typical way of saving documents, folder, you could eliminate a lot of those folders and bring the structure flatter if you use better naming conventions. So if you look at my examples there, you'll see that I said, how about rather coming up with a naming convention that says REP for reports or whatever, and I normally put my year and month in front of it. And I'll show you now why. So normally my document has the year and the month in front of it, and the day if it needs to be a unique document, okay? If not, then it can build the electronic version. So what it then allows me to do, and this is what's amazing about search, okay, is that if I then search for sales report, it'll search across all my teams, but because I use my year and month in front of the document name, I know exactly which document I'm looking at. In the past, if you looked for sales report on your file share, you would find gazillions of them, and you would have to navigate to it first to open it to see which document it is. So just adding the year and the month in front of the document already is a big save. And add little acronyms like REP for reports, which means you save another folder. So when I then look at teams, and I just want to go back very quickly to the previous slide, if I look at these folder structures, I've got a bit of a rule there as well. So my two favorite numbers in the world is 7 and 3. So no more than 7 teams, no more than 7 channels. Remember, there is exceptions. And I never go deeper than 3 level on folders. That's it. So my channels is my first level of folders. So there's my first level. I go 1, 2 maximum, okay, but I try and flatten that where I can. But you can only flatten folder structures if you use better naming conventions. So please take serious note of that. Okay, so let's get moving on. I'm going to just quickly see if there was any other questions. I've still got loads to cover. Can you add a retention policy to manage unused team sites? Yes, Dina, you absolutely can. Let me just publish that. And absolutely, Karika. So let me look back at so retention policies, and I've got the resource here that I'll share with you where you can go read up about the retention policies. So you can look at retention for unused teams and things. I do have some advice around that. I'd be very careful to delete teams, okay? So I've got a better option. If we then go, so retention policy we're going to look at now. Then Karika, how's it, Karix? Tracy, is it possible to delete teams that have already been created but are not being used at all? Absolutely. So I am going to share some advice for you on that when it comes to archiving of teams. I prefer to archive first. So archiving is my first step, and then deletes my second, like final, last final thing. Okay, so let's add this as well. Correct. There we go. So another question from, and guys, if you don't want me to publish your questions, you can always just say leave private in brackets if you want me to just speak to you directly. Michelle's also asked, I've changed the channel name once, but it did not change the folder name in SharePoint, which is exactly what I just spoke about. When I tried to change the name of the channel back to the old name, it would not allow me to because there was already a folder with that name in SharePoint. So my rule is, so if you have a channel, you create a channel called Tracy Cupcake. It creates a folder in SharePoint called Tracy Cupcake. If you rename this, it tends to keep that folder on the old name, the internal name. And then what she did is she went and renamed that back. And when she renamed it back, it then wanted to create a new folder, and a folder by that name already existed. So my thing is, I'm very careful to rename folders. I don't like the idea of it, or channels. I would rather chat to the team and say, guys, whatever conversations we've had in this, is there anything that's like crucial, or can I just select the content and move it to a new channel and delete the channel and the folder in SharePoint, okay? If there's crucial conversations in that channel that you just can't use, take a screenshot of it and save it in a PDF. I mean, instead of keeping a channel that's not necessary. So if there's a specific conversation you don't want to lose and you want the proof of it, save it somewhere. I would not delete and rename. I'm very, very careful with that. Okay, that's last resort. So I'd rather delete and create a new one than rename a folder. Okay, so cool. That moves me on. I hope everyone likes my crazy colors in my PowerPoint. You can go, by the way, I'll quickly put it in the announcement. There's 4 sites that I use for my crazy graphics. The one's called pexels.com. The one's called gratisography.com. The one's called unsplash.com. The one's called pixabay.com. They're all royalty-free, non-copyright images, not for external websites and selling stuff now, but awesome graphics that you can use. So that's where I dig out all these crazy hipster stuff of mine. Okay, let's get moving on. So, so thanks for those questions. I just want to see if there's anything new. Got to keep my eye on it. Oh. Roma has asked, let me just publish that. So thanks for the question, Roma, before I get moved on. So Roma has asked, how can you remove old conversations automatically? My Teams is full of old chats with people that have already left our organization. Now, to be honest, I'm not quite sure, and I haven't quite read up about it because I don't know everything, okay? How long it still shows the messages and what the retention is on that. As far as I know, you don't lose, but I've got to be very careful saying that. But there's no way that I know of that you can automatically remove old stuff. And that is painful. When people have left the company, it still shows. If there's anyone on this, please, and that's why I like publishing it. Remember, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know everyone who does, and you're all on the call. So if anyone sees a question that someone's asked and they think like, hey, Trace, I've actually got the answer for it, just go and throw it in there. So Roma, I'm very sorry, but I don't have a solution for that one. Okay, structure. Let's talk about structure. I can't tell you how to build your teams, okay? Because every team, every department, every company looks different. But I've got some guidelines for you, and it comes from a place of compliance, okay? I'm one of those sticky people that does compliance and that does things like SHAKE, like safety and health and environmental and quality stuff and ISO audits. So my brain, this crazy pants like arty farty girl, has got a funny side to her brain that's very structured, okay? I know my mom doesn't even believe this. But I am going to give you some guidance on the things that I think can work. So let's just first quickly talk about the different ways that you can create a team, okay? When I click on join or create team, that's if you're allowed to create teams, because I'm pedantic about that. You have two options. I've got build team from scratch, which means it's going to deploy all those resources again. So be careful. And I've got create from, which should be your better option if you know what's possible. If I go build from scratch, I can say build a private team. So that's only specific people that has permissions to the team that are members or something. I can build a public team. So anyone can join it in the company, and then I can have an org-wide team, which means everyone's automatically added to it. Okay, pretty cool idea. I didn't like it at first. Sorry, Microsoft. I had to make peace with some of the things. I do like it now for some instances. If I go create from, I have the option to create it from an existing team or from an existing Office 365 group, which means I can create a Microsoft team called Project Template, which has got standard channels and standard tabs, which I want to add it. And then when I create a new project, I'll go copy it from that project template. It'll create the channels, not the private channels. Okay, it doesn't copy that across because obviously it makes sense. It'll even add the tabs, but it won't add the resources behind the tab. So if there was a URL, you need to add the URL again. So it's like a placeholder. So that's when you copy it from a team. From an Office 365 group means the following, and I'm sure this has happened to loads of people in companies, because we've had got lots of questions coming in. I'll check that out again now. We've had companies that's had Office 365 for years and years and years, and then Microsoft came up with Microsoft Teams. Okay, I know we were all mad about it at first, but that means you might have by then already created the SharePoint sites for human resources, for sales, for IT, for etc. Okay, and now you're like, really? So now you create a Microsoft team, and guess what happens? Creates a new SharePoint site in the background. So then you have two IT SharePoint sites, okay? If the site was created recently enough, and I don't know what the date is, but if it was created recently enough that it has an Office 365 group created to it, then it means you can create a team and link it to the old site. So if your IT site got built on SharePoint Online, let's say 2 years ago or 3 years ago, because it is quite far back already, you can go in Teams now and say, create a team called IT. And no, I don't want everything new. I want to link this Microsoft team front end to that old SharePoint site that was created, but it needs to be an Office 365 group enabled SharePoint site. So that's a pretty neat thing, but you need to know that that exists. Because if all your SharePoint sites was built and then your teams got built, then I can promise you, you're all sitting with duplicates. Sorry about that, but it's a true story. I am going to look at the questions again in a moment, peeps. I've got another Q&A, but coming up. So that's just on how you can create those. If I think of the structure of your teams, I think org structures, okay? This little organic flow all over the show doesn't work for me, because work for me is structured. So in a department or in a bigger team, I would think that it kind of like represents the org structure. So a lot of times, and again, I'm going to use human resources as an example, because I kind of know what the processes are, hopefully. So in human resources, for example, there's a department called human resources, and there's a manager for recruitment, one for training, there's a manager for benefits, there's a manager for, I don't know, Sometimes those could be the channels. So the team could be human resources and the channels could be those sub-process areas. But it depends on how big that department is and how the risk content works, okay? Sometimes I have a team per each of those. So sometimes I rather have a team separate for training, and then in training I have channels for the different topics and focus areas they have in their department, okay? So that all depends on how complicated the departments get. Now, the team, of course, is the grouping, which has the members and the owners and things assigned to it. In the team, I then have, like, think of it as subfolders. My channels are subfolders, okay? And those channels create folders in SharePoint. So those channels are my root folder categories, okay? Now, and that's then folders. And then what I said about those channels is I don't want you to go deeper than 3 with folders there. I'm begging you, don't, okay? Because it messes up your search. You're going to spend most of your life navigating to stuff, and we honestly need to move away from that slowly, okay? No, we need to move away from it fast, okay? So channels and folders, and then you get org-wide teams and private channels. We're going to talk about that now. So I definitely look at org structures when I look at setting up teams. I'm not talking about projects now. They might be defined by process or by topics or focus areas. So let's take, for example, training. If the training department wants a Microsoft team and they tell me that they want a channel for training registers, then I'm like, no, my sweetie, then you don't understand how categories work, because training registers belongs to something that's bigger. So whatever you come up as a topic with for a channel, always ask yourself the question, is there something above that? Is there something above training registers? Absolutely, administration. If you say to me that you want a channel for reports of people trained, I'm like, no. I'd rather have a channel for reports, and in reports I have a folder for training of people, I have a folder for commission earned, I have a folder for, if that makes sense. So less channels, one level in folders. Always ask yourself a question, is there a topic or a category above that? Unless that specific topic or category is so important that it deserves a channel on its own. So exceptions, but again, remember 7 plus or minus 2. This little pumpkin of ours just works in a certain way, and mine definitely is working with less than 7 lately. Okay, so projects as well could be different. Projects, I would normally create a team for each project, and the channels, you can have different things. Channels can be your project phases, initiation, scope, blah, blah, blah. Channels could be your different major deliverables. Channels from a project team could be the different teams inside of the project working to deliver things. The graphic designers, the change management and adoption people, the project management or whatever. So it's all about where are people going to go to look for content. That's what it's about. What does that folder look like? Channels shouldn't be dates and months. Channels shouldn't be things that changes every day, but that's my personal opinion. You've got to look at risk versus relevance as well, please. I'm completely okay to belong to a team where 20% of the content's not relevant to me, but 80% is. If I belong to a team where 80% of the content's not relevant to me, I'm not going to be happy. Don't think about org-wide teams now for a moment. I'm talking about the teams I work in every day. So when that 80-20 rule gets like messed up, I prefer to have a separate team. Because I mean, life is annoying as it is, people. I don't need Microsoft Teams to annoy me. I just don't. So rather split up the teams. And then also about the target audience. Who's the people that's going to work with the content? Because remember, every team has a set group of members and owners. And yes, that's going to bring me to private channels. We'll talk about that because, of course, I have something to say about that. So risk versus relevance and target audience. I'm going to look at the questions in a bit, peeps. So very quickly want to talk about private channels. Great for everyone in the world screaming hard enough for private channels, and poor Microsoft had to eventually go and build it for them. I don't think it was a good idea. I'm putting it out there. I do understand that there is business scope for it occasionally, but I personally think we could have come around it because I think private channels are going to cause a lot of problems. So I'm going to warn you so that you have enough information to make better informed decisions when you do use it. Because I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying think before you use it because it's very powerful. So if I look at a team, so you can see in this example, I've got branding, guidelines, and support. So now the guys has said to me, oh, they want a management reporting channel and it's got to be private. The first thing that I have a gripe with is that this little lock that you see there, most people are not going to see that. Okay, I'll forget about the people who don't have access to it because they won't see it anyway. But the people like me that now has access to it, you kind of missed the little lock somewhere. I'm going to forget that it's a private channel. So I put PVT in there by default so that it stands out. And I normally actually put it in the front. Okay, PVT and then the channel name in capitals. I make it stand out as much as I can. When you create a private channel, it creates a separate SharePoint site collection just for that one folder and for how many documents you're going to put in there. I can't believe that we're doing that, peeps. So that's my opinion. What I want to warn you about, and I do agree, there's companies that I help design the information architecture with private channels. I'm saying be very careful to use it just because you can. If I look at those private channels, you know how many times in companies I come across it that people belong to separate teams? So I belong to 5 teams, okay? So I'm on a senior or a junior, yeah, let's call it senior, mid-40s is senior. So I'm a senior manager, okay? And I belong to 5 different teams. And on each of those teams, there's a private channel which I belong to as well because I'm a manager. Then I'm like, why didn't you just create a separate team for the managers that has all that content instead of having private channels? So you could have had one team that deals with all those private channels or not. I'm just saying, people, please be careful of private channels, because for me, if I have access to that private channel, you know how easy it is to stand on the wrong channel and share that register that has the list of everyone I'm going to fire on Monday. And oops, I'm in the personal development channel. I'm not in management reporting. Look who's done file share support for most of our life. Okay. Great to use private channels. Please use it wisely, because a great man once said that with great power comes great responsibility. Org-wide teams as well. I'm going to check the questions in a bit. Org-wide teams, in the beginning, I didn't like the crazy noise idea behind it. But then I realized that this is a great way to actually introduce teams into companies. So let's say you haven't rolled out teams to everyone yet, and you create an org-wide team. I've got to remember now, I think the limit was 5,000 members, okay? And I think 3 per company. I can't remember that now. I didn't check it recently. So for big companies, not quite a great scenario. But what I would do is I would immediately go change the channel settings in an org-wide team, because everyone gets added to it automatically. Because imagine you're a company with 4,000 users and 4,000 people talk up and down to each other. That's like having a WhatsApp group for Seattle. I mean, that'll drive me crazy. As soon as I get added to a WhatsApp group or a Facebook, whatever group where there's more than 10 people, I normally remove myself because it gets too noisy, okay? So in company teams, I normally set it up that I have owners who are the managers and like HR and IT, etc. They're the owners of that team and the exco, and then the rest of us are all members. And then I go change the settings per channel because I don't allow people to post. Yes, I'm that person, but that means that all the management level, etc., can publish content in that team and everyone can consume it. But you don't have up and down and gifs and likes and hearts, which makes it very messy. But that's my personal opinion, depending on how big your company is. If you're a small, great, what they call a like Google startup company, you know, it's cute little things with the bean bags and the coffee machines that I see overseas all the time. Great for you, have an org-wide team, everyone can chat to each other, but I don't see that in big companies. So please look at the settings on your org-wide teams. If you want to limit it, so if there's a channel there just for the CEO, you don't want everyone to go comment on everything. So go look at the settings per channel, please. Okay, before I get to governance, I'm going to quickly look at, I don't have a lot of time left. Okay, let's see. Phil, what you doing on my webinar, dude? Don't you get enough of me on social media? So let's publish Phil. I'm going to get to his question now. So how do I should open the chat? Call with users. Also, I need to give and take. I'm going to come back to that. Anonymous. I'm just quickly publishing the questions so we can see what they are. Okay, I'm going to read all of them now. I'm just publishing it quickly because I'd like everyone to see. I may straight checks can't be. Oh, thanks, Chantal, for that answer. I really do appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Everyone must at some point jump in and answer questions. Can you move a group chat into a team channel later? You know that Dina that's on this call is actually my sister. So when family joins your webinars and gives you grief like that with like technical questions, what is this? I'll check that out now, Dina. So can you change blah, blah, blah? I'll check that now. Full org-wide 5,000. That's right, 5. Thanks, Phil. And then up to, I'll read that out now. Dina, limits and blah. Cool. Let's quickly check. Published questions. Let me run through them very, very quickly. Okay, so Phil's also answered and sent some details. Please remember, we're all in this together. So please go and help each other as well, share resources. Retention I've already dealt with. Michelle I've already So you can one by one remove chats. Yeah, one by one. So you're right. So that conversation we had about can I remove old things, it's one by one, and it depends on how the team is set up. So there's settings in the team that says the owners can remove and delete messages. Would it be advisable to have one project folder with a channel with all, so it depends on how big the projects are. So would it be advisable to have one project folder within a channel with all the other folders in them? That question can go anywhere. So normally I do projects separate. So every team is a project so that I can archive a whole project. So the team is a project, so project Cortex. The channels are initiation, scope, blah, blah, blah. So I can actually archive that whole project. I very seldom have lots and lots of folders in them because of the permissions and the people that deal with it, and also because of the ability to archive a whole team. Then Herman, how do I share documents in the chat section of a call with users outside the organization? I also need to give or take control feature. So that's all, if I understand your question. This is all reliant on whether Teams has been opened up for external users or not. And I think what you're referring to, because I've had that and I actually don't have an answer for that, so someone can answer that. I've recently seen that on normal meetings and chats, sometimes I can share a file with external people, sometimes I can't. So I think it's depending on settings on their org side. So anyone's welcome to jump in on that question of Herman, because I've also had that. Sometimes I can share files externally on a meeting, sometimes I can't. So for me, that definitely must be based on settings that side. Angel, we plan on using private teams to internal department collaboration, but sometimes private teams? So private teams is for that, yeah? But sometimes we collaborate in projects with different departments. How should we do? It's possible to share a private channel inside a private team with other users not belonging to our team. You've just caught me there on something that I don't know. So if I have a team that has 10 members, can I share one of the channels out with 2 members and another person? I don't think you can. No, I actually don't think you can, but I might be. Someone's got to stand me corrected on that. Can you have one team with users, with only 1 or 2 users, but then with users from other outside of the team? I'm going to say possibly you can, but I can't confirm it. I'll have to check that, Angel. I get a report on this afterwards as well afterwards. So, gee whiz, repeating words there. Anyone can answer that with any resource if they do. If they don't, I'll answer this in social media as well. So that was a good question. So Chantal, thanks for that, answering for Adroma. Dina, can you move a group chat into a team or a channel at a later stage? Dina, you can't just move it in. You'll have to copy content across and then change. So you can't just move it across or change a group chat into a team. That's not possible. I've got to be careful to say that's not possible. I should say that's not possible that I know of, because you never know. Microsoft might have just pushed a release button somewhere that I don't know of. Can you change a channel from public to private after creating it? You mean a team? No. So again, as far as I know, once the team is created as either this or that, that's what it stays as. So so better planning up front to rather make sure that it's not. So public team to a private one, no. Phil's answered that fast. Thank you very much. Org-wide is 5 per organization, 5,000 people, going up to 10,000. I am aware of that. Please be very careful. That can get very, very noisy. Cool questions, peeps. You're like catching me out here. I should like give out fake Ferraris for these. I don't know who Anonymous is, but no question, just really loving. Wish everyone thought this way. I'm a really, really crazy pants people, so I don't know if it's always everyone's cup of tea, but thanks for the compliment. Phil, guest users cannot share files in private chat. Guest users cannot share files, but I have, Phil, and that's, I don't quite agree with you. Then I think me and you must jump on a call somewhere and go and test that a little bit, because I've had different scenarios for that. Sometimes I can, or maybe that's the thing that you're saying. It's not just an external meeting. It's actually when you're a guest on another tenant. I think you might be right, Phil Worrell. I think it's when you're a guest on another tenant. So that whole sharing of files thing is definitely something worth checking out. Anyone who's got an answer on that? So Edgar. Team can be edited from private to public or vice versa. Thank you very much, Edgar. So that's a confirmation. Apparently, you can change a org-wide team into a private team or a private team into an org-wide team. I actually did not know that. So thank you very much, Edgar, I appreciate that. No, the team is all equal. Not sure which that one's referring to. Team is all equal. We'll look at that now. Private channel, all members have to be part of the team. Cool, thank you, Dina. So Dina's confirmed when you have a private channel in a team, you can't, it can only be people from that existing team. It can't be people from outside. I would prefer that, but thankfully for that, so that's good. Edgar, it's not possible. You cannot share a private channel to another team. It belongs to a team. So that we did get, Edgar, it was more about adding a person from another place to a private channel. Sure, guest user has no OneDrive for storage. Guest user absolutely makes sense, but oh, of course. No, that's not true, Phil. We're going to have to get back to that. Phil, I've got another note on that. We're going to have to get back to that. So it's because the guest user doesn't have access to a OneDrive, that's that attachment that's causing drama. Okay, I've covered that. I've got like very little minutes left. I'm going to have to run through this because this is me, like, I'm running through questions that I can't answer, but I kind of like it, okay? And you've got to remember, you'll never know all the questions and all the answers, but you'll know everyone who does, and that's the most important thing. Governance, okay. All of this is recorded. I'm going to just run through some of these things. In the team's UI, so that's in the front end for the owners and the members, you can archive teams, but you can restore them again. So before you delete a team, rather archive it. As an owner, you can set it that they can't add content to the SharePoint site anymore or anything. And you can just let it idle for a couple of months to make sure you don't have to start it up again. So rather archive teams first, and then wait for someone to scream because they can't add something, and then you can delete those teams, okay? So there's some settings there on the archiving, etc. Then you have settings on channels and stuff as well as on the team. So the team picture, the members' permissions, guest permissions, whether people can do add mentions, whether you allow them to add channels or not. I don't like it when members add channels. I don't like it when members add tabs. I'm sorry, I'm that non-organic person. I believe it should be a team decision. So the team should get together, the owners and the members of a team, and say, hey guys, what do you think our channel should be? What do you think our tab should be? Because when 20 people decides what they think should be done, we have chaos. I'm sorry to say that. I'd rather have a little bit of structure there, but it is a group decision. It's just about who creates it. That's my thing. So go and look at your settings on your teams, please, please, please. If you click on that settings wheel at the bottom, you can go to all the teams and to their settings. Please go check all the settings on your teams. Very, very important for me as well, people. The first thing I let people do when they get added to a team is firstly check who the members and owners are. Because we might have added the wrong Peter and now I'm saying things in the team that I shouldn't. So always check the members and owners. The second thing that I do is that I navigate to SharePoint and I set up an alert to notify me once a week of deleted items, because everyone in a team can edit and delete everything. Please do not go change permissions on SharePoint for people not to delete things. It's time that we grow up and start trusting people. Trust the technology to let you know if something goes wrong. So set up a weekly summary of deleted items, because every 7 days you'll get a little summary. It says this one got deleted, this one got deleted, and you've got 93 days to restore it out of the recycle bin, so you can calm down about that. Then I also sync the library down if it's one of my production teams that I work with every day. Please be very careful of syncing your library down. Most users don't understand that it's just not their copy, so they go and select folders and say they don't want to see it anymore. When people sync a team down, make sure that the end users know they have to unsync it before they can delete folders if they don't want to see the content anymore. Please, 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 that's very important. Okay, then Teams UI as well. This is on the channel. You can also set up some settings, so go and look at the channel. I did write a blog with all of these things, and by the way, I'm going to share that with you. Admin Center as well. The new Admin Center has been updated. There's lots of the retention policies are there. There's settings there with whether we allow external guest access on Teams, etc. That's org-wide. That's across the tenant. Okay, so that decision gets made on the bigger level. So that's on the Admin Center. I'm not going to run through all of those. This is the group expiration policy. If you go and look at docs.microsoft.com, there you can see is the expiration policy. So you can go read up about that. Then archive or delete teams. Again, archive or delete teams, go to docs.microsoft.com, just go and read up what the different settings are. So Docs is like the Bible of Microsoft 365, by the way. You just go there and you find everything that you look for. Overview of retention policies. Again, there it is, docs.microsoft.com. You can find it there. Then this is that blog that I wrote, the 10 things you should know about Microsoft Teams. So if you go to my blog, tracyvanderskyf.com, that's all the things that I discuss in detail. Again, one I've covered in this webinar. This is the one that I did on the settings of Teams, getting started with Microsoft Teams administration. Gee whiz, I am going to go like 1 or 2 seconds over, people. I just want to see if there's another new question, because I've actually answered all the questions already. So published, they're all published. So very, very quick, just on staying up to date. I'm going to be 1 or 2 minutes over. I do apologize, 1 or 2 minutes over. So staying up to date, very important for me. Docs.microsoft.com. Please use it. All the technical stuff is there. So remember, again, I'll share the slide share afterwards. The Microsoft 365 roadmap. Keep up to date with the new features that got launched, the stuff that's in development, the stuff that's being rolled out. The Microsoft adoption resources is phenomenal. Check this one out. That Teams adoption guide. You can grab the URL and it's an electronic flip book that you can add as a tab on a team, which is unbelievable. Okay. Then very quickly, this one, and this was Alistair Pugin that gave me this tip. Very, very awesome. I can't believe he knew about it and I didn't. Teamsdemo.office.com. Again, it's a URL that you can grab and add as a team to Teams, and people can click through and see what all the different functions are. Really, really cool little tip to keep on learning. Then, of course, the help inside of Teams, so /help inside your command bar. You can go and find a lot of training there. It's pretty freaking amazing. If you just go straight to Microsoft Teams video training as well, that's where all the video training is. So you can just go search for that. And that, people, brings me, I'm 1 minute late, man. Look at me winning at life. So please don't ever forget, community, crowdsourcing 101. Everyone on this call is the most important people that you can get together at any time to help you. Please go to Twitter, go to Facebook, go to LinkedIn, follow the people, get part of the community. There's so many people out there that really wants to help people and that's always prepared to answer a question. I mean, Phil's one of them as well. I swear he doesn't sleep at all. That man does not sleep at all. I've never been on Facebook at any time of the day and night and that guy's not been awake. Okay, so you can always ask a question. There's always someone who cares. Ubuntu is this beautiful African word that means I am who I am because of who we all are. You don't have to know everything, people. You just need to know everyone who does. So that brings me to the end of the webinar. I'm sorry for the 2 minutes that I stole. I'll quickly check for more questions. There is, if you go to my blog site and you go to the About page, you'll find all my SlideShare, my YouTube, my Twitter, my whatever. I don't get paid to do those things, so ignore the free ads that WordPress puts in there. Let's quickly see. Angel, you're welcome. Okay. Cool. So everyone, thank you so much from South Africa. You have an amazing day wherever you are in the world. If you are from here, if you're from overseas, thank you so much for joining us. I will try my best and be a good girl to publish the video tomorrow on YouTube. I will go through the questions and see if I've missed something. I'm quite okay with not being able to answer everything, but thanks for everyone who jumped in. I really appreciate it. I'd love your feedback. I mean, we kind of like try and be better every time at this. So if you want to give me feedback on social media as well, hit me up, hook up, let me know, Trace, it sucked terribly, and I'll have a glass of red wine and I'll feel better. I won't care. But please reach out and join the community and stay safe and stay healthy and be awesome. And let me know if there's any other webinars that you'd like me to cover. And then maybe I'll see you next week. Let's see what I feel like tomorrow. If I'm less lazy, I'll publish another webinar for next week. Maybe we'll do OneDrive. Maybe that's a good idea. We'll see how that goes. So everyone take care. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you next week somewhere, maybe. Take care.